I lived with my older brother for about 4 years after I finished school. We shared rent on an apartment together, since neither of us could afford a place on our own. During the 4th year, my brother started making better money and planned to move out once the lease ended. I wasn't making much, so I knew I couldn't afford the apartment by myself. I searched online for a roommate for a few months but eventually decided to move out too and find something cheaper. I kept searching up until the last month of our lease. My brother had already moved most of his stuff out, and the pressure was really starting to build. With my extremely low budget, it wasn't easy. But eventually, I stumbled across a listing posted by a homeowner who was renting out a room in his house. The man's name was Evan. I sent him a text letting him know I was interested, then kept searching just in case. A few minutes later, he replied. We scheduled a time to talk later that day. When we spoke, he explained everything. He said he lived alone and was renting out his spare bedroom. I'd be free to use the rest of the house too. It sounded like a great deal, so I agreed. A couple of weeks later, I packed everything into a U-Haul and drove down to the house. Between that time, we'd been texting and calling. He even sent me a bunch of pictures of the place, but I hadn't seen it in person yet. I arrived around noon and parked in the driveway. The house was definitely small, but it looked nice from the outside. Evan was standing in the garage, waving me over. He gave me a quick tour, then helped me unload everything into my room. He seemed like a regular guy in his mid-30s, about 10 years older than me, but I didn't mind. He wasn't much of a talker and seemed a little shy, but nothing that raised any red flags. We finished unloading, and I dropped off the U-Haul. By the time I Ubered back to the house, it was almost 8 p.m., and I was exhausted. Evan was on the couch watching TV. I told him I was heading to bed early, then went to my room. All in all, it seemed like a decent setup, and I felt good about it. I unpacked a few things, set up my bed, and by 9 o'clock, I was finally ready to sleep. As I walked over to the door to lock it and turn off the lights, I noticed something strange. The doorknob didn't have a lock on it. Confused, I opened the door and looked closer. The lock was on the outside of the door. That didn't make any sense. I stepped into the living room and asked Evan why the bedroom door locked from the outside. He looked confused and said he'd never noticed that before, but that he'd switch it around tomorrow. I shrugged it off and said okay. I was tired and not too worried about it, but it was definitely weird. I got into bed and quickly fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of someone moving around in the kitchen. I figured it was just Evan getting some water or a snack, so I closed my eyes again. A minute later, I heard footsteps coming back down the hallway. But when Evan got to my door, he stopped. I opened my eyes and looked toward the door. He stood there, silently, for about 15 seconds. Then I heard a click. He locked my door. My stomach dropped. My face went cold. I listened as Evan walked down the hall to his bedroom and shut the door. I sat there in shock for a few seconds, trying to process what just happened. This man I barely knew had just locked me inside my room. Fear turned into anger. I got up, walked quietly to the door, and tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. I called out for Evan, telling him. It only took a second to try opening the door before I heard Evan rush out of his room and run straight toward mine. I heard his hand hit the door, but then he paused. There was a moment of silence before he finally unlocked it. I swung the door open right away. What the hell was that? I asked, my voice sharp. Evan started stumbling over his words. He said he just wanted to make sure he was safe, because he didn't really know me yet. I understood the concern, in theory. But locking someone inside a room? That was definitely not the way to handle it. I told him flat out that I'd be packing up and leaving in the morning. Then I sat on the living room couch all night, wide awake, waiting for the U-Haul store to open at 9 a.m. I kept glancing down the hallway. Evan's bedroom door was still shut. Hopefully, he was still asleep. As soon as it was time, I drove straight to the U-Haul place, rented a truck, and came right back to the house. But when I walked inside, Evan's bedroom door was wide open. "Evan?" I called out. I walked slowly toward the room and peeked inside. It was completely empty. I scanned the room, not sure what to think. The silence in the house felt heavy, and something about it all was off. I backed out of the room and got straight to work moving my stuff. For the next 2 hours, I powered through, lifting boxes, disassembling my bed, and hauling everything out to the truck. Eventually, I had just 2 boxes left. I ran inside, picked up one, and headed toward the front door, moving fast. But suddenly, Evan appeared in the doorway. "Move," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He just stood there, staring at me, completely emotionless. After a few seconds, he finally stepped aside. I rushed past him and shoved the box into the U-Haul as fast as I could. The last box was only half full, just some random food I'd saved from the pantry at the old apartment. I decided to leave it behind. At that point, Evan was seriously freaking me out, and I just wanted to get away from him as soon as possible. I started closing the back of the U-Haul, when Evan interrupted. "You forgot this," he said. He held out the last box. "Oh, yeah. Thanks," I replied, grabbing it from him and climbing back into the truck. As I turned to stack the box, I could feel him watching me. And then I saw his hand on the door. He started pulling it down, trying to close me in. I reacted fast, stopping the door before it even got halfway down. Then I shoved him, hard. He fell to the ground, but didn't say anything. Instead of running back into the house, he bolted off toward the trees behind it. I just stood there, stunned. I had no idea what he was doing or what he was planning. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I slammed the truck's back door shut and drove away without looking back. Luckily, my brother let me crash with him until I found a new place. To this day, I don't know what exactly was going on in that house, or what could have happened if I hadn't left. But I know one thing for sure. There was something very wrong. I moved into my new house last year during the winter. It was beautiful, spacious, with a big backyard. My first home I'd ever bought. Moving in was a bit of a hassle, though, because I was doing it all alone. I pulled up early in the morning with the rental truck, shoveled the snow off the driveway, and started hauling in all my boxes and furniture. It took all day. By the time I finished, it was already dinner time. I went outside one last time, locked up the truck, and planned to drop it off the next morning. I don't remember doing much for the rest of the night. Probably just watched something on my phone to unwind. My bed wasn't set up yet, so I crashed on the couch downstairs. It wasn't the most comfortable couch, but I was too tired to care. Just as I was starting to drift off, I heard something. A strange sound, like footsteps crunching in the snow outside. It sounded like someone was walking up to my front porch. I sat up quickly, listening closely. My eyes were fixed on the front door. The sound stopped, right before reaching it. I waited. Nothing. After a while, I told myself I was probably just imagining it. I ended up falling asleep. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I noticed was the front door. It was unlocked. I was certain I'd locked it before bed. I checked around the outside of the house for footprints or signs that someone had been there. Nothing. Later that morning, I dropped off the truck and spent the rest of the day unpacking. Driveway either, so I quickly got into my car and pulled. As I pulled out of the garage, I saw him again. He was back in his yard, standing completely still, just watching me as I drove away. I didn't know what he wanted, and at that point, I didn't care. I just wanted this creepy feeling to go away. But it didn't. In fact, things only got worse from there. One night, as I was lying in bed, I started to hear footsteps. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. I lay there completely still, holding my breath. But then I heard them again, distinct, slow crunches in the grass. Someone was walking through my backyard. What made it even worse was that the yard was fenced in. Whoever it was, they had to climb over to get back there. I jumped out of bed and went to the window. I scanned the yard, but the footsteps had stopped. There was no one there. I stood and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. After half an hour, I finally gave in and went to check the window again, just to be safe. That's when I saw him. Far back in the yard, barely visible in the darkness, someone was standing there. Still. Watching me. I froze. Every part of my body screamed at me to get away from the window. I backed up, grabbed my phone, and called the police. They arrived quickly, but of course, by the time they got there, the man was gone. I told them everything, especially about my neighbor, and all the weird behavior I'd seen from him since moving in. But without any concrete evidence, they said there wasn't much they could do. He hadn't broken any laws, yet. And his record was clean. It felt like they were just waiting for something worse to happen before they'd take action. I was completely on my own. After that, I started taking more serious precautions. I triple-checked every door and window before going to bed. I moved a chair in front of my bedroom door at night. I even avoided going outside as much as possible. But none of that helped me feel safer. In fact, it only made me more aware of how unsafe I really was. I'd only been in this new house for 2 weeks, and I was already considering breaking the lease. Then, one night, something happened that pushed me over the edge. It was late. I'd come home from a long shift at work, eaten a quick dinner, and gone straight to bed. Sometime in the middle of the night, I was pulled from sleep by a loud thud. It came from outside the house, but not just anywhere. It came from the wall right outside my bedroom. On the second story. My blood ran cold. I sat up slowly, heart pounding in my chest, and crept toward the window. I hesitated before pulling the curtain back. But when I did, I screamed. My neighbor's face was right there. Just inches away from the glass. He was standing on a ladder. On the second floor. Trying to look into my bedroom window. Our eyes locked for half a second, and then he moved, quickly climbing down and running off into the night. I grabbed my phone and called the police again, barely able to get the words out through the panic in my voice. This time, they didn't take long to respond. Within minutes, they found him. He was trying to sneak back to his house, struggling to drag the ladder away without being noticed. He never admitted to what he was doing, but at that point, he didn't need to. Everyone knew. A few days later, one of my other neighbors came to speak with me. They told me they'd seen him acting strangely before, too. Apparently, one day as they were getting home from work, they caught him peeking through their window. They never reported it. They said they didn't want to start any drama, or cause problems in the neighborhood. But now, looking back, I can't help but wonder. If they had said something earlier, would this have happened to me at all? I guess I'll never know. But I'm just glad it's over now.